transport shuttle felt different from anything Kate Morrison had flown in before. Everything was bigger, designed for creatures that did not share human proportions. The seats were too wide, the ceiling too high, and the controls displayed symbols in languages she was still learning. She sat alone in the passenger section, her military duffel bag the only company she had for the 3-hour journey to training station Arcturus. Kate was 26 years old and had spent the last 8 years in Earth's Special Forces. She had completed missions that would never be declassified and survived situations that killed better-equipped soldiers. None of that mattered now. Out here, among the stars, she was just a human, the newest and least impressive species to join the Galactic Coalition. The station came into view as the shuttle rounded the second star in the binary system. It was massive, a structure that could house a small city, spinning slowly to create artificial gravity. It gleamed like a jewel against the darkness of space. Kate had seen pictures, but they did not capture the sheer scale of it. 3,000 recruits from 40 different species trained here. She was the only human. The docking process took 20 minutes. When the airlock finally opened, Kate stepped into a world that made her feel small. The corridor stretched in both directions, easily 20 feet tall. Aliens of various shapes and sizes moved past her, some walking, others floating, a few moving in ways she could not quite understand. Most did not look at her. Those who did seemed amused. A figure waited for her at the end of the corridor. He was huge, standing at least 8 feet tall with forearms and scales that reflected light like polished stone. His face was angular and sharp, with eyes that evaluated her the way someone might examine a broken tool. Commander Zarketh. Kate recognized him from the briefing materials. He was Vraxian, a species that had dominated coalition military leadership for over 2 centuries. His people were natural warriors, stronger and faster than most other species. They also had a reputation for being proud. The commander looked down at her without speaking for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a sigh. His voice was deep and carried the weight of someone who did not expect to be questioned. Your species requested representation in this program. The Coalition Council agreed for political reasons, not military ones. I want you to understand that from the beginning. Kate kept her face neutral. She had expected this. Earth had proven itself in a minor border conflict 6 months ago, fighting off raiders that had been terrorizing a coalition trade route. The victory had earned humanity a seat at the table, but not respect. Understood, Commander. I am here to learn and serve. Zarketh made that sound again. He turned and began walking, forcing Kate to hurry to keep up with his long strides. You have been assigned to Training Unit 7. Your fellow recruits represent some of the finest warrior species in the Coalition. Do not expect them to slow down for you. Do not expect special treatment. If you cannot keep pace, you will be removed from the program. They passed through several sections of the station. Kate noticed that the other aliens they encountered often stopped to watch her pass. Some pointed. Others laughed. The commander ignored all of it, but Kate felt the weight of their stares. She was a curiosity here, a primitive species playing at being soldiers. The barracks for Training Unit 7 were located in the western section of the station. When they arrived, Kate found 11 other recruits already present. They stood in a loose formation, each one representing a species she had only read about in coalition databases. The largest was Krelvor, a Kronak who stood nearly 9 feet tall. His species was known for incredible strength and aggression. They had conquered their entire home system before the coalition made contact. His arms were as thick as tree trunks, and when he saw Kate, his expression twisted into something like contempt. Next to him stood Shiara, a Zenthari whose movements were almost too fast to follow. Her species had never lost a single combat engagement in recorded history. They were assassins and hunters with reflexes that made them nearly impossible to hit. She looked at Kate with cold calculation, as if already determining the best way to kill her. The others included warriors from the Threx, Voltan, and Kaldari species. Each one was impressive in their own way. Each one looked at Kate as if she were a mistake that needed correcting. Commander Zarketh gestured toward Kate with one of his 4 hands. This is Lieutenant Kate Morrison, human. She will be training with your unit. 2 of the recruits laughed immediately. Krelvor spoke in a voice that rumbled like thunder. We are wasting resources. Humans still use primitive projectile weapons. They have no enhancement, no natural advantages. Why should we train alongside them? Shiara moved closer, circling Kate like a predator examining prey. She is so fragile. Look at her bones, so thin. She would break in half during basic conditioning. This is not a warrior. This is something we should protect, not train. Kate stood still and kept her breathing steady. She had learned long ago that responding to insults only made them worse. These warriors wanted a reaction. They wanted her to prove their assumptions correct by getting angry or defensive. She would not give them that satisfaction. Commander Zarketh raised one hand for silence. The Coalition Council has made their decision. Lieutenant Morrison will train with you. If she cannot meet the standards, she will fail. Until then, she is your squad member. That is final. The commander left without another word. The moment he was gone, the mockery resumed. Krelvor approached Kate directly, using his size to try to intimidate her. He leaned down, bringing his face close to hers. I have killed creatures stronger than your entire species. You do not belong here. Go back to your little planet before you get hurt. Kate met his eyes without flinching. She had faced down enemy soldiers in the mountains of Afghanistan and the jungles of South America. She had survived situations where any mistake meant death. This alien warrior was big and strong, but intimidation was just another weapon. And she knew how to handle weapons. I will do my best to keep up. That was all she said, simple, direct, no challenge, no aggression. Just a statement of fact. Krelvor laughed and turned away. Shiara remained close for a moment longer, studying Kate with those predator eyes. Then she too moved back to her position. The message was clear. Kate was tolerated but not welcomed. She was an outsider in every possible way. The rest of the day involved orientation and equipment assignment. Kate received armor that had been specially modified for human proportions. It felt strange compared to her Earth military gear, lighter but somehow stronger. The weapons were energy-based rather than projectile. She would need to learn entirely new combat systems. That night in the barracks, Kate lay on her assigned bunk and stared at the ceiling. Around her, the other recruits talked and laughed. None of them spoke to her. She was invisible unless they needed someone to mock. She thought about home, about Earth and the people who had believed in her enough to send her here, about her grandfather who had taught her to fight when she was young. He had been a Marine, had served in 3 wars, and had always told her the same thing. Size does not matter. Speed does not matter. What matters is whether you quit or keep fighting. Kate had no intention of quitting. These warriors thought humans were weak. They would learn differently, not through words or arguments, but through action. She would show them what humans could do. She would prove that Earth deserved its place among the stars. Tomorrow, training would begin. Kate closed her eyes and let sleep take her. She would need all her strength for what was coming. The first morning began at what humans would call 5 o'clock. Harsh lights flooded the barracks, and a voice over the intercom system announced that all recruits had 10 minutes to be in the training hall. Kate was already awake. She had learned long ago that the early bird survived while the late one got caught. The training hall was enormous. It could easily hold 500 people and had multiple levels for different types of exercises. Master Sergeant Velthar waited for them at the center. He was Thrax with 6 limbs and a body that looked like it was made of solid muscle. His species had been warriors for so long that their entire culture revolved around combat. When everyone had assembled, Velthar began walking up and down the line of recruits. His eyes passed over each one, evaluating and judging. When he reached Kate, he stopped. She could feel his gaze moving over her, taking in her smaller size, her human features, her lack of obvious weapons or natural defenses. You are the human. His voice was flat and without emotion. I have read the reports about your species. You have potential in support roles, perhaps intelligence gathering or logistics. Combat training may be too demanding for your physical limitations. Kate kept her eyes forward. I am here to complete the full training program, Sergeant. Whatever that involves. Velthar made a sound that might have been approval or skepticism. We shall see. The first week will focus on physical conditioning and weapons familiarization. Those who cannot maintain the pace will be removed. There are no second chances. The physical conditioning was brutal. The exercises were designed for species with enhanced strength, speed, and endurance. Kate found herself struggling with weight training that the others handled easily. When they ran obstacle courses, she was always the slowest. During endurance drills, she fell behind repeatedly, but she never quit. When Krelvor lifted weights that would have crushed her, Kate worked on her technique until she could lift half as much with better form. When Shiara ran the obstacle course in record time, Kate studied the path and found more efficient routes. She could not match their raw physical abilities, but she could think better. The weapons training revealed something interesting. The Coalition used energy weapons that required precision and timing, rather than just pointing and shooting. Kate's years of firearms training gave her an advantage here. She understood breath control, trigger discipline, and how to compensate for movement. Within 3 days, her accuracy scores were higher than most of the other recruits. The turning point came during zero-gravity combat drills. The training hall could simulate various environments, including the interior of a spacecraft with no gravity. Most species struggled with this. Their instincts were built for fighting on solid ground. They tumbled and spun, unable to control their momentum. Kate, however, thrived. She had trained for zero-gravity operations during her time in Earth's Special Forces. She understood how Newton's laws worked in space. Every action had an equal and opposite reaction. Every movement had to be controlled and calculated. While the others flailed, she moved with purpose and grace. Even Velthar noticed. After one particularly difficult drill where Kate outperformed everyone except Shiara, he pulled her aside. "Your species has experience with zero-gravity combat?" His tone suggested surprise. Kate nodded. "We have been operating in space for over a century, Sergeant. We may not have faster-than-light travel without Coalition technology, but we understand how to fight without gravity." The sergeant studied her for a moment longer, then he simply nodded and walked away. It was the first time anyone at the station had shown her something that might have been respect. At the end of the first week, Velthar made an announcement. All recruits would face a combat assessment. Each one would fight hand-to-hand against an instructor in a holographic arena. The arena would create random battlefield conditions. Recruits were expected to last at least 3 minutes against an opponent with decades more experience. The assessments began immediately. Kate watched as Krelvor faced a Threx instructor. The big Kronak used his strength to good effect, lasting 4 minutes before he was finally brought down. He left the arena with his head high, clearly satisfied with his performance. Shiara went next. Her speed and agility kept her in the fight for 6 minutes, an impressive showing that had the other recruits talking. She barely seemed winded when she finished. Kate noticed that the Zenthari used her natural advantages perfectly. Every movement was efficient, calculated, and deadly. When Kate's name was called, the entire unit gathered to watch. She heard the whispers and saw the smirks. Most of them expected her to fail quickly. Some were already placing bets on how long she would last. The general consensus seemed to be less than 90 seconds. Her opponent was announced as Instructor Rakthor. The name brought immediate reactions from the other recruits. Rakthor was a legend at the station, a Vraxian warrior with 40 years of combat experience. He had trained 3 generations of Coalition Special Forces. He held the record for the fastest assessment victory at just 7 seconds. Kate entered the holographic arena. The environment shifted and changed, finally settling on a rocky landscape with poor visibility. Rakthor appeared on the opposite side. He was massive even for a Vraxian. 4 arms, each one capable of breaking bones. His scales were darker than Commander Zarketh's, marked with scars from countless battles. He looked at Kate and did something that made her blood run cold. He clasped 3 of his 4 arms behind his back. He was not even going to use all his limbs. This was not a test to him. This was an execution meant to humiliate her and prove that humans did not belong. The match timer started. Rakthor moved forward slowly, confidently. He expected her to either attack desperately or back away in fear. Kate did neither. She centered herself and remembered everything her grandfather had taught her. Size is an illusion. Strength can be redirected. Every creature with joints has weak points. Rakthor struck with his free arm. It was a casual blow meant to knock her down quickly. Kate moved inside his reach, closer than he expected. She struck a pressure point on his extended arm, a nerve cluster that her grandfather had shown her existed in almost all bipedal species. The arm went numb instantly. Surprise crossed the instructor's face. He tried to free his other arms, but Kate was already moving. She swept his leg, using his own momentum against him. As he fell, she struck another pressure point at the base of his neck. The blow was precise, targeting the spot where the spine met the skull. Rakthor hit the ground hard. Kate followed him down, maintaining pressure on the nerve cluster. She locked her legs around one of his arms and applied a joint lock that her Special Forces training had drilled into her thousands of times. The Vraxian tried to power out of it, but the angle was wrong. Physics did not care about strength. The instructor tapped out. The holographic arena froze. The timer stopped at 23 seconds. The observation area was completely silent. Kate released the hold and stood up. Her hands were shaking from adrenaline, but she kept her face calm. Rakthor remained on the ground for a moment, stunned. When he finally rose, he looked at her with an expression she could not quite read. Then he bowed his head slightly. A gesture of acknowledgement. The instructor left the arena without speaking. Kate followed, emerging to face the other recruits. They stared at her as if she had just performed impossible magic. Krelvor's mouth hung open. Shiara's eyes were wide with something that might have been respect. Master Sergeant Velthar stepped forward. His expression was carefully neutral. Lieutenant Morrison, you will report to Commander Zarketh immediately. The Coalition Command wants a full review of what just happened. Kate nodded and left. Behind her, the whispers began. Not mocking this time. Confused, amazed, uncertain. She had just defeated one of the station's most respected warriors in less than half a minute. Nothing would be the same after this. Commander Zarketh's office was located in the command section of the station. Large windows looked out at the binary stars, their light casting strange shadows across the room. The commander sat behind a desk that seemed too small for his size, reviewing data on multiple holographic displays. Kate stood at attention, waiting. She had been there for 10 minutes while the commander watched and re-watched the recording of her fight with Rakthor. He had played it at normal speed, then in slow motion, then frame by frame. His four hands moved across the controls, pausing at specific moments, zooming in on particular movements. Finally, he looked up at her. His expression was hard to read. Explain to me what you did. The technique you used. Where did you learn it? Kate chose her words carefully. My grandfather was a Marine, sir. He served in multiple conflicts on Earth. He taught me that size and strength can be disadvantages if you know how to exploit them. The larger an opponent, the harder they fall. The stronger they are, the more their own power can be used against them. The commander leaned back in his chair. It made a sound like metal grinding. On my world, we are taught that the strongest warrior wins. The fastest warrior survives. Your approach is different. You targeted nerve clusters and joint vulnerabilities. How did you know where to strike? Kate met his gaze. Humans have spent thousands of years fighting each other, Commander. We developed martial arts specifically designed to defeat opponents who were bigger, stronger, and better armed. We studied anatomy and learned where every species is vulnerable. When you have no natural weapons, you learn to make weapons out of knowledge. Something changed in Zarketh's expression. He dismissed the holographic displays with a wave of one hand. I have reviewed your species' military history. You have fought more wars among yourselves than the entire coalition has fought in the last century. Every conflict taught you something new. Every defeat made you adapt. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Most species in the coalition evolved as apex predators. They dominated their worlds, faced few natural threats. When they developed space travel and met other species, they simply extended their dominance. He turned back to face her. Humans are different. You evolved as survivors, not dominators. That changes everything. Kate was not sure what to say, so she remained silent. The commander seemed to be working through something in his mind, reassessing assumptions he had held for a long time. There is another quality your species possesses. The commander's voice was quieter now. You call it adrenaline, a chemical response to danger that increases strength and dulls pain. Most species have nothing comparable. When we are threatened, we rely on our natural abilities. When humans are threatened, you become more dangerous. He moved back to his desk and brought up new data. I have been reviewing reports from your border conflict, the one that earned Earth its coalition membership. Do you know what impressed the observers most? It was not your weapons or tactics. It was your refusal to quit. Multiple times your forces were outnumbered and outgunned. Multiple times you should have surrendered. You never did. Kate felt something like pride but kept it from showing on her face. We do not give up easily, sir. That is something every human learns from an early age. Fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Zarketh made that sound again, the one that might have been a sigh or a laugh. You are dismissed, Lieutenant. Continue your training. I will be watching your progress with great interest. Kate saluted and left. As she walked back to the barracks, she noticed that other aliens in the corridors looked at her differently now. Word had spread about her victory. Some still seemed skeptical, convinced it was luck. Others watched her with new eyes, as if seeing a human for the first time. Back in the barracks, the atmosphere had changed. The mockery had not stopped entirely, but it was quieter now. More uncertain. Krelvor still glared at her, but he did not approach. Shiara watched from across the room, her expression thoughtful rather than contemptuous. One of the recruits did approach. Vexlin was Kaldari, smaller than most of the others but quick and intelligent. His species specialized in technical operations and support roles. He moved to stand next to Kate's bunk, his movements careful and non-threatening. "I watched your fight." His voice was quiet enough that others could not easily hear. "What you did was impressive. Not just the victory, but the strategy. You did not try to match his strength. You used his assumptions against him." Kate looked at him. It was the first time one of the other recruits had spoken to her without hostility. "Thank you. I did what I was trained to do." Vexlin glanced around to make sure the others were not listening. "My people value intelligence over strength. We understand that there are many ways to win a fight. I would like to learn from you if you are willing to teach." Before Kate could respond, Krelvor's voice boomed across the barracks. "One lucky victory does not make you a warrior, human. Rakthor underestimated you. That will not happen again. When we face real combat, your tricks will not save you." Kate turned to face him. She kept her voice level and calm. "I'm not looking for fights, Krelvor. I am here to train and learn, just like everyone else." The big Kronak sneered. "You are here because your species begged for representation. The Coalition took pity on you. Do not mistake charity for respect." Shiara spoke for the first time since Kate had arrived. Her voice was soft but carried weight. "Krelvor, she defeated Rakthor in 23 seconds. That is not luck. That is skill. Perhaps we should consider what we can learn from her species instead of dismissing them." The Kronak turned his glare on the Zenthari. "You defend her? You whose people have never lost a fight?" Shiara moved with that impossible speed, crossing the room to stand directly in front of Krelvor. "I recognize a skilled warrior when I see one. You should do the same, or you will find yourself defeated by someone you underestimated." The tension in the barracks was thick enough to cut. For a moment it seemed like a fight might break out. Then Krelvor turned and walked away, muttering something in his own language. The moment passed, but everyone knew this was not over. That night, Kate lay in her bunk and thought about what Commander Zarketh had said. Humans were survivors, not dominators. They adapted when others could not. They refused to quit even when quitting made sense. These traits had helped humanity survive on Earth. Now they would be tested among the stars. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of training exercises. Kate continued to improve, learning the Coalition weapon systems and adapting her combat style to work with alien teammates. Some recruits, like Vexlin, began asking her questions about human tactics. Others, like Krelvor, doubled down on their hostility. Then came the announcement that would change everything. Commander Zarketh called the entire training station together for a special briefing. They were going to participate in a war game exercise, a simulation of real combat conditions against some of the best warriors in the Coalition. It would test everything they had learned. The defending force would be led by 3 senior combat instructors. Master Commander Thilaris, a Zenthari with 200 confirmed combat victories. Senior Commander Bracanal, a Kronak tactical genius who had won 3 major campaigns. And War Commander Silvira, a Threx strategist who had never been defeated in simulation or actual combat. Kate looked at the holographic displays showing the 3 commanders. They were legends, warriors who had trained for decades, who had seen real war, who knew every trick and tactic in the book. The recruits would be attacking a defended position against overwhelming odds. This was exactly the kind of challenge humans specialized in. Impossible odds, superior enemies, no clear path to victory. Kate smiled. It was time to show these aliens what humanity really meant. The war game would take place in the simulation sector, a massive area of the station that could recreate any battlefield environment. For this exercise, the instructors had chosen an urban setting, multiple buildings, tight corridors, limited sight lines, and plenty of places for defenders to set up ambushes. It was the worst possible terrain for an attacking force. The briefing took place the morning before the exercise. Commander Zarketh explained the rules. The defending force would consist of the 3 senior commanders and a squad of combat drones. They would have heavy weapons, superior positioning, and full knowledge of the terrain. The attacking recruits would be divided into 3 teams of 4 members each. The objective was simple: capture the command center located in the heart of the defended zone. The defenders would try to eliminate all attackers before they could reach the objective. Success would be measured by how quickly the recruits could neutralize the defenders and secure the target. According to standard coalition tactics, this type of assault should take at least 45 minutes even with experienced soldiers. The recruits were expected to fail but to learn valuable lessons in the process. The exercise was designed to be impossible, a way to teach humility and the importance of following orders. Kate was assigned to Team 3 along with Krelvor, Shiara, Vexlan, and 2 other recruits named Torvan and Helix. The moment the assignments were announced, Krelvor declared himself team leader. No one challenged him. He was the biggest, the strongest, and the most aggressive. In coalition culture, those traits often meant leadership. The team gathered in a preparation room to discuss strategy. Krelvor immediately began outlining his plan. It was straightforward and predictable: a direct assault using maximum force. He would lead from the front, using his natural strength to break through defensive positions. The others would provide supporting fire. Kate listened and then raised her hand. Krelvor, I think we should consider a different approach. The defenders will expect a frontal assault. If we instead focus on infiltration and stealth, we might be able to bypass their strong points. The Kronak turned to glare at her. Your species has been in the coalition for less than a year. I have studied tactics for a decade. We will do this the proper way, with strength and honor. Shiera spoke up. Kate has a point. The commanders will anticipate standard tactics. My people value adaptability. Perhaps we should at least discuss alternative strategies. Krelvor slammed one massive fist on the table. I am the team leader. We follow my plan. Anyone who disagrees can request a transfer to another team. His eyes fixed on Kate. Unless you think you should lead instead, human? Kate kept her voice calm. I am not challenging your authority. I am suggesting we consider all our options. That is what teams do. The Kronak leaned forward, using his size to intimidate. On my world, we do not waste time debating. We act, we conquer. That is how wars are won. Kate held his gaze. On my world, we learned that the side that adapts fastest usually wins. But you are the team leader. I will follow your orders. The tension lingered, but eventually Krelvor turned back to outlining his plan. Kate listened and memorized every detail. She also studied the terrain maps and defensive positions. If the frontal assault failed, which she suspected it would, she wanted to be prepared with alternatives. The exercise began at noon. All 3 teams entered the simulation zone from different directions. Kate's team moved through an alley that led toward the main plaza where the command center was located. Krelvor was at the front, confident and aggressive. Shiara moved like a shadow, her weapon ready. The others spread out in a standard tactical formation. They made it 3 blocks before the first ambush. Combat drones appeared on rooftops and in windows. Heavy weapons fire tore through the alley. Torvan was hit immediately, his simulation armor registering a fatal wound. He was out of the exercise. Krelvor roared and charged forward, trying to use his strength to push through the kill zone. Kate saw what was about to happen a moment before it did. The Kronak was walking straight into a trap. She shouted a warning, but he either did not hear or chose to ignore her. Explosives detonated on both sides of the alley. Helix went down. Krelvor's armor took heavy damage, and his simulation systems registered multiple injuries. He was still in the fight, but severely weakened. The team was pinned down, unable to advance or retreat. Through her comm system, Kate heard reports from the other teams. Team 1 had been eliminated within the first 5 minutes. Team 2 was pinned down just like them, taking casualties and unable to make progress. The defenders were executing a perfect strategy, using the terrain and their superior firepower to control the battlefield. Krelvor was still trying to push forward, but his injuries had slowed him down. Vexlan was using his technical skills to disable some of the combat drones, but there were too many. Shiara had managed to take out several defenders with precise shots, but even her speed could not overcome the defensive positions. Kate analyzed the situation. They were losing. The exercise would be over in minutes unless someone did something unexpected. She looked at the building layout on her tactical display. The structures were designed to simulate urban combat, with multiple levels, ventilation systems, and access tunnels. Ventilation systems. Kate had trained in environments like this back on Earth. Special forces missions often required infiltrating buildings through unconventional routes. Vents, service tunnels, drainage systems. Any space large enough for a human body could become a path. She keyed her comm to speak to the team. Krelvor, I am going to flank around and try to find another route to the objective. Continue your assault to keep the defenders focused on this position. The Kronak's voice came back angry and strained. You will stay with the team. That is an order. Kate was already moving. I am sorry, but we are out of options. If this does not work, we lose anyway. Give me 10 minutes. She cut the comm and disappeared into a side passage before anyone could stop her. Behind her, she heard Krelvor shouting something, but the words were lost in the sound of weapons fire. Kate was on her own now, exactly where she performed best. She found a ventilation access point 1 block away from the main fighting. The cover was locked, but her training had included basic mechanical bypass techniques. It took her 30 seconds to open it. The space inside was tight, barely wide enough for her shoulders. Perfect. The larger alien warriors could never fit. Kate crawled through the ventilation system, navigating by memory and tactical instinct. The simulation was incredibly detailed, with dust and heat making the crawl uncomfortable. Her armor scraped against metal surfaces, but she moved as quietly as possible. Every sound could give away her position. In the observation room, Commander Zarketh watched her progress on the monitors. Other instructors gathered around, curious about what the human was attempting. This was not standard coalition tactics. This was something else entirely. Kate emerged from the ventilation system 3 levels above the main fighting. She was now behind the defensive lines in an area the commanders had assumed was secure. She could see the command center below her. More importantly, she could see all 3 commanders coordinating their defense from a central position. They were confident, almost relaxed. They believed the exercise was nearly over. The recruits had performed as expected, brave but ultimately ineffective against superior tactics and positioning. In a few more minutes, they would declare the exercise complete and begin the after-action review. Kate checked her weapon and took a deep breath. What she was about to attempt was crazy by any standard. 3 legendary commanders, each one with decades of experience. She was a recruit who had been in the coalition for less than a month. But humans had never let impossible odds stop them before. She positioned herself directly above the commanders and waited for the right moment. In the observation room, every instructor was now watching her screen. They could not believe what they were seeing. A single recruit, somehow in position to attack 3 of the most dangerous warriors in the coalition. Kate dropped through an access panel, falling 10 feet and landing in a crouch directly in the middle of the command position. The timer on her display started counting. It was time to show them what humanity could do. The world seemed to slow down as Kate landed. 3 commanders, each one a legend in their own right, stood within striking distance. They turned toward her in surprise, their weapons not quite ready, their minds not quite processing what was happening. A human recruit had somehow bypassed their entire defensive line and dropped into their command center. Master Commander Thalaris was the closest. The Zenthari moved with that species' characteristic speed, reaching for his sidearm. But Kate had trained against fast opponents before. Speed was only useful if you were moving in the right direction. She stepped inside his reach and struck a nerve cluster at the base of his neck. The same technique her grandfather had taught her years ago. The blow was precise, targeting the bundle of nerves that controlled motor function. Thalaris dropped like a puppet with cut strings. His simulation armor registered a knockout. 3 seconds had passed. Senior Commander Brocknall reacted next. The massive Kronak had combat experience that spanned decades. He did not reach for a weapon. Instead, he moved to physically grab Kate, using his superior size and strength to end the fight quickly. It was the logical response against a smaller opponent. Kate saw the grab coming and dropped low, sweeping the commander's leg with a move that her martial arts instructors had drilled into her thousands of times. Physics did not care about size or strength. An object in motion stayed in motion until acted upon by another force. Brocknell's own momentum worked against him. As he fell, Kate delivered a stunning blow to the nerve cluster at his neck. The same vulnerability that Rakthor had shown. The same weakness that existed in almost every bipedal species. Brocknell hit the ground hard, his armor systems registering critical damage. 6 seconds had passed. War Commander Silvera was different. The Threx strategist had watched Kate's fight with Rakthor. She had analyzed the recordings, studied the techniques, and understood what made this human dangerous. She did not make the same mistakes as her colleagues. She kept distance and brought her weapon to bear. Kate had a split second to react. She could not close the distance before Silvera fired. She could not dodge in this confined space, so she did something the commander did not expect. She talked. "Do you know what humans call this situation?" Kate's voice was calm, conversational. "We call it a Mexican standoff. The term comes from an old Earth conflict. It means both sides can hurt each other, but neither side can win without suffering losses." Silvera hesitated for just a fraction of a second, confused by the sudden shift from combat to conversation. That was all Kate needed. She threw a piece of debris from the floor, a simple distraction. As the commander's eyes tracked the movement, Kate closed the distance. The weapon discharged, but Kate was already inside its arc. She grabbed Silvera's arm and used a joint lock that her Special Forces training had taught her. The Threx was strong, but the lock did not depend on strength. It used leverage and angle to control the joint. Silvera tried to break free and could not. Kate transitioned smoothly into a chokehold, cutting off blood flow to the brain. It was a technique that worked on almost every oxygen-breathing species. Silvera had 4 seconds to break the hold before unconsciousness. She used 3 of those seconds trying to overpower Kate physically. By the time she shifted tactics, it was too late. The simulation registered Silvera as incapacitated. 11 seconds total. Kate stood in the command center, breathing hard, surrounded by 3 unconscious legendary warriors. The exercise timer confirmed what had just happened. Mission complete. In the observation room, absolute silence reigned. Every instructor, every observer, every member of the command staff stared at the displays in disbelief. Commander Zarketh stood frozen, all 4 of his hands gripping the edge of the console. What he had just witnessed should not have been possible. One of the junior instructors finally found his voice. "Replay the sequence. There must be a malfunction. No recruit could defeat 3 commanders in 11 seconds. It is not possible." Zarketh replayed the footage, once at normal speed, then in slow motion, then frame by frame. Every angle, every sensor, every system confirmed the same thing. Kate Morrison had done exactly what the displays showed. No malfunction, no error. Just skill, strategy, and the kind of adaptability that came from a species forged in endless conflict. Back in the simulation zone, Kate's comm crackled to life. "All recruits return to the assembly area immediately. The exercise is complete." The voice was Master Sergeant Velthar, and he sounded stunned. Kate made her way back through the simulation zone. The combat drones had powered down. Their defensive protocols deactivated when the command center fell. She passed the positions where her team had been pinned down. They were gone now, already returned to the assembly area. When she arrived at the assembly area, every recruit was there. Every instructor was there. Commander Zarketh was there. They all turned to look at her as she entered. The silence was deafening. Krelvor was the first to speak. His voice carried a mixture of disbelief and anger. "What did you do?" "We were pinned down, taking casualties. Then suddenly the exercise ended." "What happened?" Before Kate could answer, Commander Zarketh activated the main display. The footage from her infiltration played for everyone to see. The crawl through the ventilation system. The drop into the command center. The 11 seconds that followed. When it finished, the silence was even deeper than before. The 3 commanders entered the assembly area, now recovered from the simulation. They looked shaken in ways that seasoned warriors rarely did. Master Commander Thelaris spoke first. "I have 200 confirmed combat victories. I have trained for 40 years. Today, a human recruit defeated me in 3 seconds. I do not understand how this happened." Senior Commander Brocknall shook his head. "She used my own strength against me. My size, which has always been an advantage, became a liability. This is not how combat works in coalition doctrine." War Commander Silvera looked directly at Kate. "You made me hesitate. You used words as a weapon, creating a moment of confusion. Then you exploited that moment perfectly. I have studied thousands of combat scenarios. I have never seen that technique used effectively." Commander Zarketh stepped forward. His expression was difficult to read, but his voice carried a tone that Kate had not heard before. "Respect. Lieutenant Morrison, explain to everyone here what you did and why it worked." Kate took a deep breath. "On Earth we have a saying, work smarter, not harder. Humans are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We do not have natural weapons or armor, so we learn to think our way through problems. We learn to use tools to exploit weaknesses to adapt to any situation. She gestured to the display showing the ventilation system. I could not win a direct confrontation against your defensive positions, so I found another path, one that used my smaller size as an advantage instead of a disadvantage. That is what humans do. We turn our weaknesses into strengths in the combat itself? Zarketh asked. How did you defeat 3 experienced warriors so quickly? Kate looked at each of the commanders in turn. I used techniques developed over thousands of years of human warfare. Pressure points, leverage, joint locks, distraction, these are not tricks. They are proven methods that work regardless of size or strength. My grandfather taught me that every opponent has vulnerabilities. You just have to know where to look. Shiara spoke up from the group of recruits. Her voice carried genuine curiosity rather than mockery. Can you teach these techniques? Would they work for other species? Kate nodded. The principles work for anyone willing to learn. It requires study and practice, but yes, any species can learn to fight smarter instead of just relying on natural advantages. Commander Zarketh looked around the room. His gaze settled on each instructor, each recruit, each member of his command staff. Today we learned something important. The Coalition has grown comfortable with our methods. We rely on strength, speed, and technology. We have forgotten that the most dangerous weapon is not physical. It is mental. He turned back to Kate. Lieutenant Morrison, from this moment forward, you will assist in updating our combat training protocols. The Coalition needs to learn what humanity knows. We need to learn how to adapt, how to think unconventionally, how to win against impossible odds. The mockery that had followed Kate since her arrival was gone. In its place was something else. Not just respect, but understanding. The other recruits looked at her differently now. They saw not a weak human pretending to be a warrior. They saw someone who had just taught the Coalition's best warriors a lesson they would never forget. That night, Kate's bunk was surrounded by recruits asking questions. How did humans develop these techniques? Could she teach them? What other secrets did Earth's military history hold? Even Krelvor approached, though his pride made it difficult. His words were simple but carried weight. I was wrong about your species. I apologize. Kate accepted the apology with grace. Training Station Arcturus would never be the same, and neither would the Galactic Coalition's understanding of what it meant to be human. 3 months after the 11-second victory, Training Station Arcturus was a different place. The changes were visible everywhere. In the training halls, instructors now taught pressure point targeting alongside traditional combat techniques. In the simulation zones, recruits practiced infiltration and unconventional tactics. In the strategy rooms, commanders studied human military history with the same intensity they had once reserved for Coalition doctrine. Kate Morrison had become something she never expected. Not just a recruit, but a teacher. Commander Zarketh had assigned her to work with every training unit, sharing human combat methods and strategic thinking. The work was demanding and often frustrating. Many alien warriors struggled to accept that their natural advantages could be liabilities. But slowly, attitudes changed. Shiara had become one of her most dedicated students. The Zinthari warrior's natural speed combined with human techniques made her nearly unstoppable. She had requested special sessions to learn more about human martial arts, particularly the mental aspects. How humans controlled fear, how they pushed through pain, how they refused to accept defeat even when all logic said they should. Even Krelvor had changed. The proud Kronak had initially resisted learning from Kate, but after watching other recruits improve, his competitive nature took over. He began asking questions, attending training sessions, and experimenting with techniques that seemed absurd for someone his size. To everyone's surprise, he discovered that his strength became even more effective when combined with proper leverage and positioning. Vexlin had formed what humans might call a friendship with Kate. The Kaldari's technical skills complemented her tactical thinking. Together, they developed new training simulations that forced recruits to solve problems creatively rather than relying on standard approaches. These simulations became some of the most challenging exercises at the station. Word of what happened at Arcturus spread throughout the Coalition. Other humans began arriving at the station, no longer as token representatives, but as valued instructors and trainees. Each one brought their own experiences, their own techniques, their own perspectives on warfare and survival. The coalition military was learning that humanity's greatest strength was not any single ability, but rather their collective adaptability. 6 months after her arrival, Kate graduated from the Special Forces training program. She finished first in her class, ahead of warriors from species that had dominated coalition military leadership for centuries. The graduation ceremony was attended by high-ranking officials from across the galaxy. Commander Zarketh personally presented her with the honors. During the ceremony, Zarketh gave a speech that would be remembered for years. He spoke about assumptions and how dangerous they could be. He talked about how the coalition had become comfortable, relying on methods that worked against known threats but might fail against unknown ones. He praised humanity for bringing fresh perspectives and challenging old ways of thinking. The galaxy is larger than we know. Zarketh's voice carried across the assembly hall. There are threats we have not yet encountered, species we have not yet met, challenges we cannot yet imagine. Humanity has shown us that the answer to unknown problems is not more strength or better technology. It is adaptability. It is the willingness to learn, to change, to evolve. He gestured toward Kate and the other human graduates. These warriors will serve alongside coalition forces throughout the galaxy. They will teach what they know. They will learn from us as we learn from them. Together we will become stronger not through power alone, but through diversity of thought and approach. After the ceremony, Kate stood at one of the observation windows looking out at the stars. Her grandfather would have been proud. She had done what he always told her to do. She had represented humanity well. She had shown the galaxy what humans were capable of, not through arrogance or aggression, but through determination and skill. Shiara approached and stood beside her. The Zenthari warrior had become something like a friend over the past months. On my world, we have a saying. The strongest tree is not the one that grows tallest, but the one that bends in the wind without breaking. I understand that saying better now. Kate smiled. We have a similar saying on Earth. The oak tree stands firm and strong, but in a great storm it falls. The willow bends and survives. Humans learn to be willows. We bend, we adapt, but we never break. The Zenthari nodded thoughtfully. I am glad your species joined the coalition. You have taught us much. Perhaps together we can face whatever challenges come. Those challenges came sooner than anyone expected. 2 years after Kate's graduation, the coalition detected an unknown fleet entering their territory. The ships were massive, using technology that no one recognized. Initial attempts at communication failed. The unknown fleet attacked a border colony without warning. The invasion had begun. An extragalactic species with superior numbers and advanced weapons. Their tactics were efficient and brutal. They did not negotiate. They did not retreat. They simply conquered. Coalition forces tried to respond using standard military doctrine. They suffered devastating losses. Kate was serving with a special operations unit when the call came. The Coalition High Command was forming rapid response teams to counter the invasion. They wanted units that could think creatively, adapt quickly, and fight against overwhelming odds. They wanted teams trained in human methods. Kate's team included Shiara, Krelvor, and Vexlin. The 4 of them had trained together for 2 years. They understood each other's strengths and weaknesses. They had learned to combine their different approaches into something greater than any one species could achieve alone. Their first mission was a raid on an enemy supply station. Coalition intelligence said the station was heavily defended and impossible to assault directly. Kate looked at the data and saw something different. She saw ventilation systems, blind spots in sensor coverage, and predictable patrol patterns. She saw opportunities. The mission succeeded with 0 casualties. Then came another mission, and another. Each time, Kate's team accomplished objectives that other units considered impossible. They did not win through superior firepower. They won through creativity, adaptability, and the refusal to accept that any problem had only one solution. Other units began copying their methods. Coalition forces started using infiltration tactics. They set up ambushes instead of fighting pitched battles. They targeted supply lines and communication networks instead of engaging in direct combat. Slowly, the tide began to turn. The invaders who had seemed unstoppable started suffering setbacks. The turning point came at the Battle of Horizon Station. A critical coalition stronghold was surrounded by enemy forces. High Command ordered an evacuation, believing the station could not be held. Kate's team was among those assigned to cover the retreat, but Kate saw another option. The enemy fleet was powerful but predictable. They relied on overwhelming force and superior technology. They had not adapted their tactics since the invasion began. That was their weakness. She proposed a plan that High Command initially rejected as too risky. A small team would infiltrate the enemy flagship and disable its command systems. Without coordination, the enemy fleet would lose its tactical advantage. It was the kind of mission that should have been impossible, the kind of mission that humans specialized in. Commander Zarketh, now a fleet admiral, authorized the mission. He had learned to trust human instincts. Kate led a team of 20 warriors from 8 different species. They infiltrated the flagship, fought through its defenses, and completed the objective. The enemy fleet fell into chaos. Coalition forces counterattacked and won the battle. The war continued for 3 more years, but the coalition never again faced defeat. Human-trained units operated throughout the conflict, turning impossible situations into victories. Other species adopted human tactics and philosophy. The coalition military transformed from a force that relied on strength into one that valued flexibility and creativity. When the war finally ended, Kate Morrison was a decorated officer and a legend in coalition military circles. The story of the human recruit who defeated 3 commanders in 11 seconds was told across the galaxy. But more importantly, humanity had proven its worth. Earth was no longer a junior member of the coalition. It was a respected partner, valued for its unique contributions. Years later, Kate returned to training station Arcturus as an instructor. She taught new generations of warriors, sharing the lessons that humanity had learned through centuries of conflict. The students came from every species in the coalition. They no longer mocked humans. Instead, they sought to learn from them. On her first day back, Kate stood in the same training hall where she had once been dismissed as too weak, too slow, too primitive. She looked at the recruits assembled before her. They were young, confident, convinced they knew what it meant to be warriors. She smiled. They would learn. Welcome to Special Forces training. Kate's voice carried across the hall. You are here because you believe you are the best your species has to offer. You may be right. But being the best is not enough. You need to learn how to adapt, how to think, how to win when all the advantages are against you. She gestured to the training equipment around them. Over the next months, you will learn techniques developed by humanity.